the necessity of action to manifest what you want is paramount. Most of the time, the desire is growth and expansion, which means you need to leverage the spiritual limitless nature of you. So if you have any fear around money, wealth, business, or life in general, you're going to feel stuck. Physical motivation is protection, and our physical nature is finite and limited. We're preparing for lack. We're preparing for an end. And that's not where true freedom and abundance manifest from.
Serino's back. You're back, man. You're back. We're doing it.
I just got off a cruise.
You did.
I went to the Bahamas.
Well, man, of course you're in the Bahamas. And, you deserve a little restful vacation like that, right? With all the abundance you share with the world, and you deserve a little bit of, escape.
Yeah, I was still working though. What's funny is I use vacations as my time to research and read. And actually, I would love to do more intentional vacations just to read. Like I'll bang out a couple books in a week and actively take notes on it. And that's what I actually enjoy doing. That's what's relaxing to me. As weird as that sounds.
What were you getting into? What books were you cracking into?
I read Ready, Fire, Aim. It was about going from 0 to $100 million and the different stages of business and what to do as far as marketing and sales and systems for each stage. So that was a good one. I've gotten away from reading for sport because that's what I used to do. Like, oh, how many books can I read? And that just became like a fancy form of procrastination. So now I'm getting back into intentional reading, whereas I'm looking for books that I can directly apply to the current state of my business and actually execute on the advice that's in there. Because if you're not taking action on the advice or information that you learn from a book, it's not really useful to you.
Ready, fire, aim. So taking a business from 0 to 100 million, marketing, the systems, the sales, the protocols, that speaks to what we're going to discuss today being, manifesting wealth.
Yeah.
Right?
We're going to talk about manifesting money today. We're going to get a little bit more practical. As always, I like to incorporate the spiritual side of things. So we're going to talk a lot about a spiritual side again today, because at the end of the day, we're 100% spiritual and 100% physical. And most people go wrong with manifestation in the sense that they focus only on the physical side of things and not the spiritual side of things. So when I'm looking at all of this work and how to manifest something, I'm really looking at it from the spiritual lens first, and then how does that integrate physically to manifest a material outcome. So we often talk about wealth in the sense of material gain as the form of money or the dollars that we have or don't have. But we also have to look at wealth as the invisible, spiritual culmination of our emotional, mental, and spiritual state that actually makes us have a perception of wealth, not a condition of wealth. If that makes sense.
A perception of wealth versus a condition of wealth.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, wealth is not a condition. It's not the dollars in your bank account. It's your perception, right? I've met plenty of people who make very little money, but they feel a lot wealthier than people who I've met who've made 8 figures a year. It comes down to some cliche things like gratitude, from having some self-awareness, from being conscientious of not just grateful for what you have, but who you are. I saw a post today. Someone was like, oh, I'm so grateful to have, the ability to travel and to make money. And I have my family, but really what I'm grateful for first is who I am, right? Who God has designed me to be and what he has said about me in my life. That's what I'm grateful for first, which lends into the gratitude of what you actually have. It's the whole be, do, have model of transformation.
Got it. So we have these 2 angles that we're going to be navigating through. We have the spiritual realm and the physical realm of wealth building and manifesting for it. I love it. And I love that we put it into this conversational dialogue here in the podcast platform. But you've already, laid out these action steps and framework in some of your courses and programs. Is that correct?
Yeah. So my course that I'm most excited about and feel most proud about creating is my 9-day Master Manifestor course. that being said, I also created my mindset modification course because, as we said when we just started, is it's both spiritual and physical, right? It's both visible and invisible, meaning there's two sides to this manifestation coin. So the 9-Day Master Manifester is kind of more of the esoteric, intangible, what you might call traditional manifestation type methods and education, where the mindset modification course is more of the practical neuroscience-based self-hypnosis methods to manifest things. Both are required. And actually, for people that are listening or watching this, I don't really have this anywhere on my website or anything, but when you buy the 9-Day Master Manifester, you also get my mindset modification course for free now. So a little insider tip for those who want to go grab it.
Insider quick tip.
Quick tip.
Okay.
Remember to do that later today too.
Cool. So got it. So you have those frameworks and very meticulously laid out for anybody if they want to go consume it in that way. Mm-hmm. And this is just really the conversational version, and people can go get that right now, right?
And what I always say is everything that's in my courses, I pretty much give away for free. And people think I'm shooting myself in the foot here, but I also find people appreciate this because sure, everything that's in the course, we will probably touch on in this podcast, maybe not in this episode. It might happen over the course of a couple of years, which means you have to then go kind of go through the information, the episodes, and figure out my processes. Whereas if you buy the course, sure, I may have given it away for free in my content and in this podcast, but now it's in a nicely wrapped package for you, step by step, easier to consume. So people will pay for that. But that's not to say that you can't get massive value out of the information that I'm going to share with people on the podcast and specifically here today. For example, one of the things I talk about in the course, which I'm not trying to, I don't gatekeep because I'll talk about it right now. And we talked about it last episode or one of the previous episodes is the manifestation ladder and how manifestation is the alchemy of vision, belief, and action. And so just to recap, we have vision on one side of the ladder. It's one support. We have belief on the other side, another support. And then the rungs of the ladder are action. And so this also brings up the point that I always say is that you can't spell attraction without action. And I think if we could put a theme behind today's episode, it's the necessity of action to manifest what you want is paramount. You have to be willing to take action. And we're going to talk today about how to make action easier, how to make it more effortless, because it's not about hard work. It's not about excruciating effort and discipline and willpower, because we know willpower does not exist. It's a myth. It's about taking aligned, inspired action to mobilize yourself towards your goals and towards your manifestations. And the interesting thing is when we go back to that manifestation ladder concept or framework, between those rungs, like I mentioned last time, is the invisible space. And that's where we see synchronicities. That's where we experience luck. And I always say that the more action you take, the luckier you get. You know, it expands your surface area of luck. And it happens exponentially and disproportionate to the amount of action you're taking, which is actually a really beautiful thing. So it's not saying 1 unit of action equals 1 unit of luck. It's actually 1 unit of action could equal 100 units of luck. Now, obviously, I'm creating like a tangible container around luck, which doesn't exist. But my point is you will get luckier and luckier exponentially more with every action that you take. And so the question becomes, well, how do you take action that's aligned with your manifestations? And what I want to talk today about is what's actually holding people back. Where does that resistance come from? Why does it feel like we're stuck? Why does it feel like you have your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time? And that's what we'll kind of cover today.
Yeah, and through the manifestation practices and hypnosis practices and that whole community and network, there's so many frameworks and analogies and things. And you invented and coined the manifestation ladder, and that's the whole reason why I think it's prolific. It's the most prolific of all analogies or frameworks for how to make manifestation work. Just because it's such an exact correlation between, the theoretical ladder and the action taking with the vision and the vision. Each side of the ladder is, correct me, vision and
belief.
And each rung on the ladder is actions that you take.
Yes.
In order to
succeed. To manifest. And that ladder is taking place over time and through space, just like a ladder. You're moving up through space and it takes time. This is where most people get really aggravated with me, and I strike a chord with a lot of people. It's because like, oh, I've manifested this thing out of nowhere. Yeah, we've all had that experience. I've had that experience where like my dream clients have come out of nowhere, where I've won money, where I've had these opportunities come into my life where I couldn't have consciously engineered them. Yes, that happens, but that goes back to my point, is that only happens when you take action that's aligned with your manifestation in the first place, and then these kind of supernatural, miraculous things also occur.
Yep.
So what I like to focus on is both the spiritual and the physical side of things. And the issue here is that the reason we have resistance is because our physical motivations are in direct conflict with our spiritual motivations.
Okay. Break that down.
So what do I mean by that? Our physical nature is finite, right? This meat sack that we're in will eventually stop working and turn into warm dirt, right? It's finite. It's going to end. But we're also spiritual. We have a spirit. We have a soul that lives on in eternity. It's limitless. And so we have something that is physical and limited and finite, and something that's spiritual and limitless and infinite. And so the motivations of those two elements of us are in direct opposition. So let's kind of break that down a little bit.
Okay.
Because our physical nature is finite, what do we try to do? We try to protect ourselves. We try to survive. Security and protection. That's the goal physically. Spiritually, what's the goal? The goal is growth, expansion, creativity. And so those two are in direct opposition to each other. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we leverage the spiritual, limitless side of things to manifest rather than trying to manifest from a restrictive, limited state? Does that make sense?
Conservative state.
Yeah. So this is where the problem really shows itself, because since we desire spiritually this limitless, infinite freedom, but physically we're trying to protect ourselves and trying to maintain security, well, we're going to always feel stuck because of those conflicting motives, and we're never going to truly manifest the freedom that we consciously tell ourselves that we want. Because consciously we say we want financial freedom. Consciously we say we want this limitless abundance, but really at a nervous system, subconscious, physiological level, we just want security. And if your true drive is security, and security is really just food, clothing, a warm place to live, and medical care, we may as well go commit a crime, because there's plenty of people in jail who have quote unquote security,
Wow, this is crazy.
Yeah. And so this is, when I was writing up the notes for this episode, I was thinking back to how we wanted to start going deeper on these things. And this one is going to go really deep again. And I always say this, but like some of it's going to go over people's head, but when it lands, it's going to land, and it's going to have to marinate for a lot of people, because these are spiritual truths that are tough to articulate consciously, but have a profound impact on the quality of our life and what we do or don't achieve.
Wow, you breaking it down like that really makes it make sense for me, because I know you always talk about having your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time, but the way that you just broke it down, that our motivations are in constant conflict, is just, it just makes it make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, when you think about what you want to manifest, manifestation, most of the time the desire is growth and expansion, which means you need to leverage the spiritual limitless nature of you. But you also are a physical being who does want to survive, that has biological drives to protect yourself. And because those two things are conflicting, well, now this is when you start self-sabotaging. This is when you procrastinate. This is when you feel paralyzed. This is when you don't take action towards your goals or your manifestations, because really the pursuit of your manifestation is a threat to you physiologically. So you're actually trying to protect yourself by not manifesting what you want. I just created my very own Hypnosis app, where you can literally have me in your back pocket to help you lose weight faster, make more money, and make your success inevitable. I've combined ancient wisdom and modern day neuroscience to create this app where you can literally reprogram your own subconscious mind for success. To get started today, click the link below and grab your free 7-day trial. I'll see you on the inside.
Which is going to be more effective for me then? Freeing myself from this physical motivation to survive, or pushing for my spiritual motivation to expand.
So this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is the key to manifesting is aligning your subconscious programs, your mental programs with your conscious desires. And really what, in context of what we're talking about here, is it's manifesting from a spiritual perspective rather than a physical perspective. And for those who might feel a little confused right now, I'm going to land this plane in a little bit and reference how this relates to manifesting money specifically. But what we have to do is, if we want to manifest our biggest goals and dreams, we need to change our motive and focus on the spiritual rather than the physical. So we have to flip the switch from pursuing security and protection to pursuing growth and expansion. And I told
subconsciously,
we're getting deep.
Subconsciously, right?
Subconsciously. Yeah.
So it's the switch. It's making the switch.
Yep. And if I could give an example specifically how this relates to money, think about it just like your physical body. You have physical limitations, and different people have different physical limitations based on their physical makeup. Someone who's like 5'2" may not be able to dunk a basketball because they're physically limited. Well, the same thing is with the physical properties of money. If I took out a dollar bill right now, it would be limited in value to the physical property in the form of the denomination that's imprinted on it. So even though the dollar bill is the same as the $100 bill in size and in weight, it's bound by its physical limitations of the denomination that's imprinted on it. Does that make sense?
Okay, so the denomination that's printed on it. Got it. You're saying that a $1 bill and a $100 bill are made of the same thing, and they're the same size, and they're the same currency, but the denomination on it is indicating its value.
Which is a physical property of that dollar bill is what's imprinted on it.
Okay, got it.
Right? And even just a dollar in general, regardless of the denomination, is limited by its physical property. And this is where I said we're gonna get deep and high level, and we're gonna go up and down and have to come back up for air and whatnot in this.
This is what we want,
yeah.
Serino. This is what we want.
And this is, by the time we get to the end of this episode, it's all gonna make a lot more sense. So what we have to do is we got to step away from the physical properties of wealth. This is where we go back to wealth is not a condition. It's not a number in your bank account. It's not a dollar amount. It's a perception. It's a feeling. It's an emotional and spiritual state. That's true wealth. When we focus from that perspective, we end up experiencing that freedom and that limitless wealth, if you will. And ultimately, when you focus on it from a spiritual perspective first and you step into the limitless rather than the limited, that's when the material gain ends up mapping to the spiritual.
I see what we're doing here. I see what you're doing here. I know where this is going to land, because it would be said that it could be easier to step into that emotional state of wealth than it could be to hustle and grind and work hard as we think we need to in order to acquire that physical state of wealth. Mm-hmm. But you're saying that with focus and with manifesting and with hypnosis, we can reach the emotional state of wealth, and then what naturally will follow will be the physical state of wealth.
Exactly, yeah. And you're giving away a little bit of the secret.
Sorry.
I know we talk about hypnosis all the time, but we'll get there in this episode, and we'll talk about it in a future episode as well. But let's stay on the point real quick about the physical properties of wealth and making sure we don't manifest from a physical perspective, and first we do it from a spiritual perspective, because when you focus only on the physical manifestation of money, you limit yourself, because your primary physical motivation is what? Survival and protection. And we know that's limited because our physical nature is limited. You think to yourself, oh, I want to save for a rainy day, right? Or I need to make sure I secure my retirement because one day I'm going to stop working. What does this imply? It implies that the money is finite. It implies that the wealth is finite. It implies that the faucet of abundance is just going to get turned off one day. And so really, we're preparing for lack. We're preparing for an end. And that's not where true freedom and abundance manifest from. And so we have to switch our focus from saving because we think something's going to end, or save to protect ourselves in the future, to saving for opportunities, saving to invest in our growth. This is why, we see we always reference the Bible. There's a parable in the Bible where Jesus tells a rich guy to sell all his possessions and follow him. Is that saying that we need to sell all of our stuff for the spiritual abundance that's offered to us? No, that's not what Jesus is saying. Now, some people that might be the case. He might be calling you to sell all your stuff and start a ministry or whatnot. But really what he's talking about is the detachment from the material world, detachment from the physical nature, because the true abundance starts in the spiritual realm. So
the true abundance starts in the spiritual realm. So that's the place we're going to focus on first. Now, what if I am somebody who is a follower of yours and I'm not necessarily a spiritual being, or I'm not? Is this spirituality limited to Christianity, New Age, different religions, or non-religious spirituality? Is it limited, or can I do this of any faith?
Yeah, you could do it of any faith. And we talked about this in a previous episode. Many people who are not Christians, who might be in the New Age community or occult community, they look a lot more like Christians than actual Christians that I've met. It's because of their faith, which is what we're going to talk about next is, okay, well, how do you operate spiritually more so than physically? Because you got to think about, what if you switched your focus to saving money for opportunities? Like, what if you focus on the spiritual state of wealth rather than the physical state of wealth? Well, not only does your actual freedom get put back on the manifestation menu, you will naturally experience this limitless overflow of abundance in all areas of your life forever. This is where like true enlightenment and that feeling of abundance and freedoms comes from, is from the spiritual side. And so when you ask, do you have to be a Christian? No, that's just the container I put it in. That's what I believe in personally is the best way to experience that enlightenment and peace and joy and love. But anybody can leverage these spiritual truths, because no matter what, no matter how you slice it, no matter what you believe in, you are a physical being and a spiritual being at the same time. That it's fact. Those are truths. There's spiritual truths and there's physical truths. So regardless of what belief system you wrap around that truth is irrelevant, because we're all subject, just like we're all subject to gravity, regardless of our religious beliefs.
Anyone can leverage these spiritual truths.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Taking you to the switch.
So let's talk about how to practically shift from the physical to the spiritual when it comes to manifesting money. Because I know that's why a lot of people are listening to me or watching my content, is because they've seen some level of success in my life. I became on paper a millionaire by the time I was 32, have millions of dollars in real estate, grew my business, sold a business. Like, I've talked about this stuff, and I only say this really to show the receipts, because there's always people like, oh, why would I listen to this guy? But people see this and like, oh, I want that. And so everything that I talk about on this podcast and my content is like stuff I actually use. And the things that I'm articulating now are what I was kind of subconsciously and almost accidentally leveraging up until I figured out how to articulate it in this sort of format. So I practice what I preach is my point there. And what I did first is I had to figure out, well, how do I get out of the physical limitations and into the spiritual abundance and freedom? And the first thing you have to look for is signs that you are operating more in the physical than the spiritual. And the biggest sign to look for that will indicate that you're stuck in the physical side of things is fear. And that might sound simple on the surface, but let's go into it further. Fear is a protection mechanism. And remember, what's our primary goal physically? It's protection. So if you have any fear around money, wealth, business, or life in general, you're going to feel stuck, because as we just talked about, the physical motivation is protection and our physical nature is finite and limited. So we're limiting ourselves naturally and automatically if we are in any sort of fear at any point. This is also why, not to get biblical again, but to get a little biblical, is God tells us he gave us not a spirit of fear, but a spirit of strength and confidence and self-control and of a sound mind. This is a spiritual truth. And so we can look at some of the common fears that people have, like fear of failure, fear of rejection. But really, I think what doesn't get talked about enough is the fear of lack in general. It's that whole, I got to save for a rainy day. I got to make sure I put in the 40 years to get my retirement secured, because what am I going to do when I can't work anymore? What do I do when that flow of finances and money gets turned off, right? And so I think a really simple way to ask yourself or to investigate if you're more in the spiritual or the physical, and people could do this right now, you can do this right now while you're listening to this, is literally close your eyes and ask yourself, if everything was taken from me right now, all my money, my business, my car, my home, everything I have, if it just disappeared in this moment, first impression, do I feel more fear or faith? And then you just go with your first impression. You can open your eyes. And if your first inclination was fear, well, then we have to ask ourselves, what do we do with that? How do we get out of that state of fear? And now, we mentioned faith a little bit before. I think you said it first. This is the first time I'm kind of alluding to it or saying it directly. Faith, that's where we're going to get a little more esoteric. Faith is an invisible substance. Like spiritually, faith is as real of a material as the physical dollars in your wallet. Okay?
Faith is a substance. It's just invisible.
It's a literal substance. So remember, we're going to say some things that are a little crazy, that are hard to articulate consciously. And these are where these spiritual truths are hard to really wrap our minds around because this is fact. Faith is an invisible substance. Just like this can is a substance. We can feel it physically. Substance or faith is a real substance. So
how?
Well, that's the spiritual mystery. That's why I'm so adamant about reading the Bible, because all these things that have been revealed to me have come through research and watching other people's content, Christians and things like that. But even my own research of the Bible, I begin realizing these spiritual mysteries get revealed between the lines, so it's not enough to just like look for a Bible verse that you want to jazz you up for the day, or to do a devotional that a lot of people do, or to just go to church one time a week. The active study and meditation on the word, on the Bible, will reveal to you these things that are getting revealed to me. One of the things that was revealed to me recently is God wants the glory. He wants the honor. And so one of the things I always pray routinely, almost every day, is two things actually. One, I always pray that God would guide my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions. Because ultimately the goal is to live in his will, not my will. So when I'm manifesting things, when I'm setting goals for myself, I do my best, to at least the best of my ability as far as I think, is to align my will with his will. And then the second thing I pray is, I'm like, God, if this is not meant for me, burn it. It's like burn it or bless it. Do it quickly. If I have a goal that comes to my conscious awareness, I have to decide through my spiritual discernment, is this in God's will, or is this in my will? And one of the ways I've kind of learned to do that, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, is I just pray, God, burn it or bless it. If I'm not supposed to have this real estate property, if I'm not supposed to go down this lane in my business, block it quickly, do it quickly. And I'll fully submit, and then I'll pivot.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Burn it or bless it.
Yep.
And do it quickly.
Do it quickly. Yeah. Because I've gotten to such a point, and we're going to talk about faith a little bit more here, is I have so much faith that I'm willing to walk away from everything at any point. Like all of it could get burnt today. Like my G-Wagon could blow up, my house could burn down, God forbid. Everything, I could go back to zero and I'd be perfectly okay, because I have already experienced the spiritual wealth and abundance. And this is why that aspect is so important. And I operate from a place of faith and expansion and limitless. So I know even if I go back to zero, I have the ability. God has already spoken over my life in his word. I've already have these God-given affirmations, if you will, about who I am and what I'm capable of, that I have no doubt that I can pick back up tomorrow at zero and do it all over again.
You're serious that when you close your eyes and say it could all be burned today, all of it, that you close your eyes and see that and you don't have any fear?
No fear. Zero.
You're dead serious.
100%.
Wow.
Yeah. 0.
I believe you.
Yeah. I mean, and it's easy for me to, this is where people will flinch a little bit watching this or listening to this. Is like, well, dude, you have this stuff. It's easy for you to say, well, you have it. But I've been there. I've been at 0. I've been at rock bottom. I was suicidal at one point. I was over 330 pounds. The whole story that I've talked about many times. I used to call, I was 26 years old, had a business, and I would still call my grandmother up because I had negative $400 in my bank account. I couldn't afford to pay my bills. And I call her and ask her for money. Like I've been there and I got out of it. So part of my faith comes from the evidence of what I've already achieved and done. But most of my faith comes not in faith in my ability, but in faith in God, right? He's going to work things out for my good. And one of the things I was starting to talk about before was what has been revealed to me in my biblical spiritual search is God wants you to set goals so big that when you achieve them, you can't take credit for it. Like
Unpack that. What do you mean?
So God wants you to set goals so big that it couldn't possibly be of your own doing when you achieve it. You know what I mean? Like you have to achieve something so great, so big that there's no other explanation than that God had his hand in it.
And he wants us to.
Yeah, because it gives him the glory. It gives him the glory and honor and praise that he was able to be the ultimate and sovereign hand in our life. And so that's the main reason why I have faith, because I know he's working all things together for my good, for your good, for the good of people who believe in him and love him. And we see this in the Old Testament. I was just reading in the Old Testament where one of these leaders long story short, I forget I got to do better remembering names in the Bible. But he was going to conquer a town and he had like 10,000 soldiers. And God's like, no, I don't want you taking 10,000. I want you to take 300 because when you beat them with 300 people, they're going to know that it was me that sent you, So when I set goals and I achieve goals, I do it because I want people to know that it wasn't me, it was God, So everything I have in my life, and I've talked about this before, is that it's not about me and my ability. He's given me ability. He's given me power and authority in certain areas of my life. Like I said before, I don't think he necessarily wants me driving a G-Wagon. There's still things I have, a little bit of greed sometimes. I have an ego, I'm wondering who's looking at me while I'm driving my car. I catch myself with those things sometimes, but I know he's using all of it in some capacity for me and for my good.
Wow. If this is hitting you the way it's hitting me right now, then we're on the same page. God wants you to create such huge, profound moments of success that its only explanation is that he is responsible because God wants to be in his glory.
Yeah, and it goes back to the conversation of not everybody is meant to steward wealth. Not everybody is meant to have millions of dollars. I would say if it's on your heart and you desire it and you can align yourself with God's will and you can increase that spiritual Wi-Fi connection, you can strengthen it through obedience, through righteousness, through meditating on the word, and you still have that desire and it's to serve others, then I think that's a pretty good indication that you are meant to steward wealth in some capacity. But I have friends who don't care about money. I have friends that work 9-to-5 jobs. They get 1 or 2 vacations a year. They have a family. They live somewhat comfortably, and that's cool. They don't desire more money. So to me, sometimes the desire is an indication of whether or not you're on the path that you need to be on in the first place.
Wait a second. So a desire is more times than not an indication of whether or not you're on the right path in the first place. Yes
and no. I think it comes down to your spiritual, like I said, spiritual Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah, right. To have the
if you're in God's will, if you're living obediently and righteously, and you still have that desire, and you know that it's coming from a place of service and help and generosity, that's an indication that you're on the right path. But if you're just doing it because I want to drive a G-Wagon so people think I'm cool, that's not why I should want that, and therefore it's probably not a God-given desire, if that makes sense.
So do you think for those of us who are righteous, that desire is actually a spiritual technology?
Yeah, it goes back to intent. This is where I've said before that everything that is in the New Age community is just a ripoff of what's been spoken about in the Bible. Like intent is what all of the New Agers talk about. And I just use the word desire. Desires of the heart is something that the Bible talks about. It's all basically, I don't know. These people just have bastardized the truths of the Bible and taken the attribution away from the true source, which is God, and put it in themselves. The reason people love New Age and the occult and some of these more esoteric manifestation philosophies that leave God out of the equation is because they don't have to take any responsibility.
Accountability.
Where the Bible tells us that we're sinners, we're dirty, we've messed up, and we need a savior. We need someone to come save us. We need Jesus. We needed that because that's the only way to really experience true spiritual abundance and fulfillment and peace and true love. Where the New Agers were like, oh, I can just go like set up these crystals and I can burn some sage in my house and I'm good.
Interesting. So what you're talking about is the disparity between intent and desire and whether or not they indicate the same thing based on whoever coined them. So because I do feel like intent is sort of set and desire is sort of from within. Is that not so?
Yeah. So I think desire probably precedes intent, right? You have a desire that comes up, a want, a need, a desire, kind of the same thing, I guess. And then you have an intention to then manifest that desire.
Interesting.
So a little bit of a nuance there. I think if we could circle back to how this relates to money specifically, is that, and this is going to be a big claim here, and it's hard to rationalize consciously, but the spiritual substance of faith, the spiritual substance of desire, the spiritual substance of trust, because these are all spiritual technologies and substances, it will manifest in the physical form of money and other material success. Everything that happens physically has to happen spiritually first. Okay?
Say that again.
Everything that happens physically, everything you manifest physically has to happen spiritually first.
It's a law?
It's a law.
It's law.
Yeah. And when I say, by the way, when I use the word spiritually, I'm not referring to it just from a Christian perspective or I'm really when I say spiritual, I'm almost using it sometimes synonymously with the word invisible, right? Spiritual, mental, emotional, those are all kind of invisible elements of life, where the physical elements of life are our bodies, the dollar, the car, the material things around us. So if you look at it, let's take out the spiritual word for a second. What has to happen in order for you to manifest something physically in general? Well, you have to change what's happening mentally and subconsciously. Those things are, your mindset is invisible. You can't put it in a wheelbarrow, so to speak. So everything has to happen invisibly before it happens visibly. That might be a better way to put it.
Okay, but what you said before, everything that is manifested physically first has to manifest spiritually. But what you said before that is the thing.
What did I say? I forgot. I'm just going on endless stream of consciousness.
No. This is next level. What you're doing right now. This is next level. You're talking about faith being a physical substance and what physical substance it manifests as. You're talking about faith as a spiritual substance, and when it manifests first through spirituality, through faith, then that manifests as money. That's what you said.
Yeah. Well, this is why the Bible says that even the faith the size of a mustard seed can move a mountain. And when we think about what that even implicates and what that really means, is think about 2,000 years ago when the Bible was written during, let's say, Jesus' time. Imagine we had told them that some guy named Elon Musk was going to build rockets and send them up into outer space and then catch them as
on the way down. Yeah.
That would have been miraculous. Or imagine we told them that we were going to have giant, machinery that could literally move a mountain. So which brings me to a point is a lot of what people try to manifest supernaturally or miraculously, really what they need to understand is that the supernatural miraculous results can actually happen by a very practical means, right? Like you could move a mountain today. If you had enough money, enough resources, enough manpower, you could literally move a mountain. And so I think too many people are praying and hoping and trying to manifest these supernatural miraculous results without leaving space for the practical means and ways that it could happen.
Wow. You're hitting me hard, man. I didn't realize you were going to unpack all this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we've addressed the spiritual side.
Yeah. So let's distill this down into a easy to remember framework. How about that? Because we went really high level. Let's go down a little back to ground level here.
Break it down.
Yeah. So the first thing that you have to realize is that if you're feeling fear, you're limiting your success and you're blocking your full potential. And you're also preventing yourself from experiencing true freedom. Because remember, if you have fear, you're operating in the physical. The physical is finite, which means you are not going to experience freedom, the limitless nature that you experience spiritually, because you're too in the physical if you're experiencing fear. So what are some symptoms of fear? Well, we see people with procrastination. This is when you self-sabotage, the negative self-talk, and just that general feeling of being stuck. Those are pretty good indications that you're operating in fear. Now, you could even have a more severe symptom like a complete mental paralysis. There was a time in my life where I would get out of bed and I didn't even want to take a shower, didn't want to brush my teeth. I was operating in constant fear. And so that will prevent you from taking even the smallest action. And as we said at the onset of this episode, was you have to get comfortable with the fact that you're going to need to take some action towards your manifestations. And so fear tends to lead to inaction. And so to manifest anything, especially wealth, money, financial freedom, you need to eliminate the programs of fear that are running in your mind. That's as simple as that. If you could just get rid of the fear, you'll start manifesting faster, which is really the trick to manifestation. It's aligning your mental programs with your conscious desires, as I've said many times. And it's about leveraging the invisible world of mind and spirit so that you can create your physical reality without those limitations. Did that sum it up?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And by the way, if anybody's listening to this, leave questions below. I'm really encourage people to comment on these videos on YouTube. Share the episodes if you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Share it with people. And I want to, more than anything, create a conversation, because just like when you read something, a book, the Bible, it doesn't have to be something spiritual or a religious text, anything. It's what you learn between the lines, what's revealed to you between the words, that is going to give you the biggest impact and revelation.
Yeah, and what people don't realize about this podcast platform in particular is this is a book. I mean, you can press the transcript right now and read this and highlight key phrasing, and you just gave us the synopsis in verbal form. You gave us the breakdown for us to have a breakthrough, and it's very mapped out here. YouTube does a lot for us within the transcript, but really there's timestamps, notes in the description of this episode. People can use this as a program, as a curriculum to really study, because what you're doing is writing a book with this microphone right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it doesn't need to be edited too much.
and not only is this a book that we're reciting, I mean, I have my laptop in front of me because for hours and hours a week before we even hit this record button today, I've written notes and I've studied and I've researched and I've literally written it down. I probably could create another book just from what I've written for these episodes that we record. So I would, as a favor to me, I would ask anybody listening to get on to YouTube specifically, find these episodes, ask me questions, because that fuels the content and the revelation for future episodes.
Yep. And the audio distribution platform, whether you're an Apple or Spotify or any of these several, you can leave a review, and that's the same as a comment. Drop a review as if it was a comment on the audio distribution platforms. And sometimes, listen, you see me, I have my Remarkable here. I'm taking notes while Anthony is discussing these points with me for multiple purposes. I'm writing here for the purpose of post-production, right? Taking bullets down so that we know what we want to turn into reels, marking powerful statements, but also I use writing as a way to ingrain in my brain. So these topics that Anthony is discussing are important to me as I navigate success in entrepreneurship, in life, in relationships. So when I write down these notes, rarely do I refer to them, but the writing helps it ingrain in my mind. So we encourage you to take notes too, if you're into it like that.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to one of the things we talked about at the top of the episode was reading actively, listening actively, taking notes. I treat all the videos that I find that I'm genuinely intrigued on and I think can be beneficial to my life or business, I treat it like I paid $10,000 for this information. And I say that in my courses too. I said, even though this course is only a few $100, $500, whatever it is, treat it like you spent $10,000 on it. And then ask yourself, if I spent $10,000 on this course or on this podcast or on this video, how would I interact with it differently? Well, I'd start taking notes. I'd start meditating on it. I start really analyzing how this information applies to my life. I'd be more active in the learning process. So for those of you listening or watching, do it actively. I encourage you to do that. Otherwise, this is just going to go in one ear and out the other. So
that's a powerful part.
Yeah. That being said, I think let's wrap up this kind of idea of and framework of manifesting wealth, money, and abundance from a practical perspective. So far, we've talked about the spiritual side, how things stem from the spiritual side and then manifest physically, and the way to figure out if you're more in the physical than the spiritual, which is the backwards way to do it, is by asking yourself, am I in a state of fear? Do I have programs of fear running subconsciously, mentally, etc.? Now, the next logical question is, if you are in a state of fear, how do you eliminate that fear? Well, of course, you kind of revealed the secret before, but this is where hypnosis comes in. This is why I do what I do. This is why I have millions of followers on social media and I've achieved everything I've achieved, is because I've learned to hypnotize myself for success. Specifically, I've learned how to use hypnosis to change my subconscious operating system, to delete the bad programs and to install good programs. Because whether it's a fear of flying or a fear of failure or any other fear in between, every fear that you have is simply a pattern of thought, emotion, and action that you subconsciously learned in an effort to protect yourself from something your mind deemed as a threat to you in some way. Right? A little girl gets bit by a dog. Her brain learns that dogs are bad. It wants to protect her from dogs in the future. So now it creates a pattern of thought, emotion, and action to keep her away from dogs. Boom, protective mechanism. Same thing can happen with money. If you learn that money is bad because it was demonized, maybe because you were brought up in a religious household where it was incorrectly assumed that money is the root of all evil. By the way, I had someone call me out in a previous episode. Sometimes I misquote the Bible. Sometimes I misspeak. I'm going to mess up. I do my best to correct myself. This is why I always say to test what I'm saying, but I digress. My point is, every fear you have is a protective mechanism. So you have to learn how to reprogram those fears and delete them at a neurological level. And the fastest way to do this is hypnosis, because hypnosis allows you to create real neurological change very quickly and allows you to delete those mental programs of fear and install programs of faith and self-belief. Now, we probably are not going to have much more time in this episode to talk about the technical side of hypnosis. We'll do that in another episode, I think, right?
Yep, I think so.
We'll talk more about the neuroscience of hypnosis and manifestation. But all you need to know for right now is that the key to manifestation manifestation in general requires the alignment of your internal programs with what you want to experience externally. And the way to upgrade your mental programs so that they align with what you consciously desire is by using hypnosis. Now, a little caveat to everything I just said is that it's not just about eliminating the fear, because even if we're fearless, we won't take action towards our manifestation, towards our goals, if we don't have the belief systems to back up the action. Meaning, if I have low self-worth, or I don't believe I'm deserving or worthy of success, of money, of financial freedom, then I'm probably not going to take the action because I don't even believe I'm worthy of it in the first place. So why would I take action towards it? So it's not just eliminating the fear, it's also eliminating those limiting beliefs, which once again, hypnosis can do. And if we could really summarize the belief system part of it, it comes down to self-worth. I got a bar for you, okay?
Let me hear it.
Okay. Your net worth is your net worthiness.
Okay, wait, give me that again.
Your net worth is your net worthiness. Your self-worth, your internal bank account, is always going to be the determining factor of your external bank account. So what you experience physically from a material success perspective is always going to be in direct proportion to how much you value yourself and your level of self-worth.
You're making a lot of us look in the mirror, Anthony. You're making a lot of us spend a little extra time looking in the mirror, taking accountability for what's inside.
Yeah. And I'll leave everybody with a little cliffhanger here as we wrap up this episode. The Hebrew word for secure actually means worthy. And so security is tied to worthiness. And so really the whole physical desire for security is actually also a spiritual game. So with that, I think we got to wrap that one up.
Wow.
By the way, buy Celsius. Celsius needs to sponsor us.
Yeah, Celsius. Get us a sponsorship. We have plenty of high-level entrepreneurs walking in the door every day here at Q29 Production Studio. And look, Anthony's got some Audio-Technica headphones on his desk. He doesn't wear them, but I'm wearing them right now. And we have probably 10 pairs in this studio. So, peace.
Awesome. As always, thanks for watching this episode. If you love it and you want more of these juicy hypnotic goodies, manifestation, spirituality, make sure you check out the other episodes right here on my page. You can go on your favorite podcast streaming platform and also check out my Hypnosis app. You can get a free 7-day trial there. If you want to work with me one-to-one, you can also reach out, send me a message. But at the end of the day, my job is to help you become the best version of you and help transform your life from the inside out. So however you consume this content, I greatly appreciate you. And the fact that you trust me with your time and energy really means a lot. So thanks for being here.